This is maybe a little counter to conventional wisdom about how things like capital increases are viewed. So I think the longstanding view is that the U.S. in particular is strongly against capital increases for the IBRD, that you can always count on the U.S. being resistant to wanting to do something like this. Whereas my message is it's directly in the U.S. interest to stay engaged in the bank through the mechanism of fundraising. And if you so quickly write off what would be the future of fundraising for the bank on the capital side, if you are the United States or other large, particularly non-borrowing shareholders, you're really going to be losing out in your ability to set the bank's agenda going forward. You know, both non-borrowers like the United States and the European countries, but even large borrowers like China and India, if you don't give them a common forum in which to talk about these big agenda-setting issues going forward, I think you have a bank that loses its own prominence. It simply becomes less important to these countries over time, and is a little bit unmoored, frankly, in terms of setting its own agenda. Who really is driving the agenda if you don't have a process in place where the shareholders are strongly engaged? So my essay is as much a call to those countries and really trying to demonstrate to them that it's in their own self-interest to express an openness to other ways of financing the bank going forward, not just IDA replenishments, but on a more routine basis, capital contributions. Which, by the way, you know, if you come back to the financing of these things, one of the great virtues of putting money into the IBRD or even IFC is it's very cheap compared to what an IDA replenishment looks like. Because IDA is grant-based, it's essentially $1 in from donors gets you $1 of financing on the ground. IBRD is a leveraged model. It's a capital model. Based on their capital, they can go into private markets and issue bonds, and this allows them to leverage up their assistance. That has a direct effect on what a capital increase looks like compared to an IDA replenishment. And we saw it in 2010, in the same year that the U.S. was signing on for about a $1.4 billion a year commitment to IDA. The total extent of their capital increase commitment was about $185 million a year. So orders of magnitude smaller. This really should not be seen as a huge budget burden or constraint looking forward. I think there are other political dimensions of it that have caused the U.S. historically to be resistant.
And those political dimensions are basically loaning to middle-income countries is less popular. Loaning to China is seen as...
That's right. I mean, there's no doubt that the great political appeal of the World Bank for the U.S. and the various constituencies in the U.S. has been support for the poorest countries and the poorest people. But even that view is evolving. I think one of the things that current bank leadership has been very effective with is making the case that poverty exists in middle-income countries, and developed needs are certainly great in middle-income countries going forward, and the World Bank has a strong role to play there. India is by far the leading example of that. Yes, they're graduating from IDA, but the largest group of poor people in the world continue to live in India, so the needs are there. It's just that the bank will employ a different financing model.
Well, thanks, Scott. I look forward to hearing more about this conversation going forward, and thanks for being here today.
Great, my pleasure.